Has anyone ever told you the story about Jesus's transfiguration? Well, if no one has, Luke chapter 9, verse 28 is about to tell you. About 8 days later, Jesus took Peter, John, and James up on a mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was transformed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly, two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared and began talking with Jesus. They were glorious to see, and they were speaking about his exodus from the world, which was about to be fulfilled in Jerusalem. Peter and the others had fallen asleep. When they woke up, they saw Jesus' glory and the two men standing with him. As Moses and Elijah were standing there, or were starting to leave, Peter, not even knowing what he was saying, blurted out, "Master, it's wonderful for us to be here. Let's make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But even as he was saying this, a cloud overshadowed them, and terror gripped them as the cloud covered them. Then the voice from a cloud said, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." Listen to him. End of sentence. When the voice finished, Jesus was there alone. They didn't tell anyone at that time what they had seen. This is the first time, I believe, in any gospel where we actually see Jesus's spiritual self come alive. And it's such an important part of the Gospels because it shows that there are these two, I want to use the word two natures. There's this video that came out recently. I don't know who this guy is. His name's God Logic. And he debated some other guy, Al Dalway or something. I don't know what his name is. Basically, this one guy was saying that Jesus is a walking contradiction because you can't have human and God at the same time. But he was saying it would be like having a square and a triangle. You can't have a square triangle. That's a contradiction. But what God's logic was trying to explain, and he did this very well, was that although you cannot have a square and a triangle exist at the same time, you can have a square and a triangle exist together as the same time. And so in this case, this is what the transfiguration of Jesus is showing us, is that Jesus is fully human and he is fully God. And it's in that moment that he shows himself to Peter, James, and John. And he's speaking with Elijah and he's speaking with Moses. And we don't know what they said in that conversation, but I imagine it was something quite powerful. The interesting thing, too, is I'm wondering how John... I don't know if they all recognized that it was Moses and Elijah, but how would they have recognized these two? I'm imagining their spirit probably told them, they probably knew, they just saw them and they went, that's Moses and that's Elijah, because they wouldn't have seen, how long before did these two exist? But then we have God, we have his voice confirming it all, saying, this is my son, listen to him, my chosen one. And the reason he's saying this is because he knew that they would make a show called The Chosen. And he said, if I call him my chosen, then they will be able to name the show The Chosen. I'm just kidding. I got you, though. Just making sure you're paying attention. So God says, this is my chosen one. Listen to him. And you see Peter being the guy that he is. He's scared. Although I'm sure any human would probably freak out. I'm sure I would freak out too. It's always Peter, though. They always show Peter's the one who's always like, he's constantly being like, I love you, God, but then he's got to be like, no. he's constantly like losing his confidence in Jesus, which is actually really funny, versus some of the others that aren't talked about as much, or Paul, who once he learns who Jesus is, he never stops fighting and he never loses. His love for God only grows stronger. Peter loves God too, but Peter is constantly like running away from stuff too, which is, I think a lot of us are more like Peter. I think a lot of us want to be like Paul, but a lot of us are more like Peter in the sense that we kind of talk, we talk a big game, but then we have nothing to show for it when the chips are down. And this is Peter, because right before this, Jesus says, who am I? He's like, Peter, who am I? And then Peter goes, well, some say that you're Elijah, some say you're Moses, some say you're John the Baptist. And then Jesus goes, well, who do you say I am? And he says, you are, what does he say exactly? He says something along the lines of, you are God, or you're the Messiah, confirming. And then, yes. You are the Messiah sent from God. So that's what he says. And then he goes and he freaks out. If he was knowing this, he should have, why would he be scared by seeing this thundering cloud and hearing a voice? He'd be like, oh my God, it's God. But he freaks out instead. And they don't really make reference, at least in Luke's gospel, to Jesus punishing him. But I just find it funny that the character of Peter, the living person of Peter, just constantly is doing that. And sure, there's a part in Matthew that talks about, I know the transfiguration is in Matthew. Let's find it. Matthew's gospel. I never have this stuff bookmarked, which would probably be convenient rather than having to look for it every time. But I can feel it. I feel like I'm getting closer to it. I'm looking right at it. Yeah, there's more that Matthew says on this. Look, it's wonderful the disciples were terrified. Then Jesus came over and touched them. Get up, he said. Don't be afraid. And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus. When they went back down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Then his disciples asked him, why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes? Jesus replied, Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized, and they chose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer. Then the disciples realized he was talking about John the Baptist. So Matthew expands on that a little bit more than Luke does. And you see that John's beheaded. He's Elijah, and he is beheaded. All these guys they're like, hey, we're waiting for the Messiah, waiting for Elijah, and then they get the guy, and then they're like, you're not him, you're not the guy we've been waiting for, and we decide who's the guy. So they kill him. And Jesus has the same fate. And once again, proving the point that Jesus predicts his death before it happens. He says he's going to rise again. Would have been humanly impossible, not beyond humanly, naturally, any kind, would have been impossible if Jesus was not the Son of God.